What's up everybody, this is David Young with Drone Launch Academy, and I'm here to tell you everything you need to know about drone insurance in 2018. Alright, I know drone insurance sounds like probably the most dull topic on the face of the planet, but I promise we're going to make this painless, get right to the point. We're going to tell you everything you need to know if you're asking the question, what do I do about insurance for my drone? Make sure you stick around for the whole video because we're going to be covering what types of drone insurance are there and what types should you get. How long is drone insurance good for? Are you locked in for a whole year or can you get it just when you need it? We're talking about what's the difference between a broker and underwriter and where you need to go. How do I get a policy? What do I do if I crash my drone? How much drone insurance do I need to get? Do I have to be a licensed pilot? Is it actually legally required? All these questions we're going to answer in this video, so make sure you stick around for the whole thing. Now the first thing you need to know when talking about drone insurance is that there's two different types of drone insurance. The first one is the hull insurance, which covers the actual drone itself, like this Mavic Pro here, and the second is liability insurance. If you harm someone else or damage someone else's property, instead of you having to pay for that out of pocket, your liability insurance will kick in and will cover the cost of that for you. Something to note about hull insurance is that often you can't even get hull insurance unless you first have liability insurance. With liability insurance, the most common coverage level is $1 million of liability coverage. Now, some companies go down as low as $500,000, and some insurance companies will insure you as much as $25 million of liability coverage. Now, obviously, the more liability coverage you have, the more expensive that policy is going to be. Fix my hair. And exactly what that liability policy covers varies from different policy to policy. Some liability policies only cover the actual medical costs and property damage, while other policies will cover even things like bail bonds, legal expenses, and other miscellaneous items. Liability coverage really is the most important thing to have because you never know what's going to happen with your drone, and you never want to be put in a situation where you're going to be exposed to a high risk of getting sued. So you want liability coverage first, and then if you have a drone and some nice equipment that you want to also get covered, then add the hull insurance. Okay, so we've got hull coverage and we've got liability coverage. Is there any other types of coverage that we can get? Well, yes, if you have different sensors or cameras that attach to your drone, and they can be detached and attached and they're very expensive, you probably should get payload coverage. And that covers additional things that can attach to the drone, different payloads, and can insure those separately as well, because sometimes that hull insurance might only cover the aircraft and the sensor might be covered separately if it can be detached. A lot of these smaller drones, the sensor, the camera, and the drone are one cohesive piece, so they're covered together. But if you have nicer models of drones and more of the high-end ones, those sensors and cameras can be swapped out, and so they might need to be insured separately. Make sure you check with your insurance carrier about this in case there's any confusion. Now that you know about liability coverage, hull coverage, and payload coverage, let's talk about the different formats of drone insurance. And this is very new to the insurance world, okay? Drone insurance has come a long way in the last few years, and now they have on-demand drone insurance, and this is getting insanely popular. On-demand drone insurance allows you to purchase coverage only for the times that you're actually flying. So you don't have to have one big expensive policy covering all your stuff. When you go out to fly, you can get coverage for just that flight. Then you have the traditional type of policy, which is an annual policy. You purchase a contract for insurance coverage for the whole year, and you pay it all up front in one lump sum, and that covers you for the whole year. Now, for a lot of people, that's overkill because they're not flying that many jobs, they're not using their drone that much. They don't want to get one big policy for the whole year. They just want to pay for every time they go out on that specific flight. All right, let's talk about cost for a minute. How much does drone insurance cost? Well, if you're looking at on-demand insurance, that typically can start around the $10 an hour range. So if you want coverage for an hour, it's $10. If you want coverage for 2 hours, $20. If you want coverage for a whole 8-hour day, $80. Now with annual policies, those policies typically cost $500 to $800 a year, and you'll likely be paying all of that up front. Now if you have hull coverage, that'll probably be closer to the $800 mark. With just liability, depending on how much liability you get, that'll be on the lower end of the range, maybe like $600. And again, these are just estimates. Prices can change depending on who you talk to and which companies there are, but we went out and did some research. Now you might be asking yourself, David, what is the best type of drone insurance for me in my situation? Well, that really depends on a couple of things. What kind of equipment do you have? How much do you fly? Are you flying for business or for recreation? But typically, I would say rule of thumb is if you fly your drone more than 5 times a month, it would probably make sense for you to get an annual policy, because if you're going to fly 5 times in a month, 1 hour a piece, $10 an hour, that's about $50 a month you'll be paying for drone insurance. That's $600 a year. At that rate, it might make sense to go ahead and get that annual policy. That way you can fly as much as you want and it's not gonna cost you more. But if you fly 5 or less times a month, then it probably makes sense for you to stick with the on-demand insurance. And sometimes it might make sense even if you have more frequent flights, depending on what rates you're getting from those on-demand drone insurance companies. Now in a second I'm going to tell you about the main players and who to actually go to get the drone insurance. But before I do that, it's important that you understand the 2 different types of people in this drone insurance game. There are the underwriters and then there are the brokers. The underwriters are the ones who are actually assessing the risk on how likely you are to crash your drone, how much it's going to cost, how much losses they're going to have, what they're going to have to pay out, all that stuff. They're the ones actually shelling out the money if you crash your drone, damage something, hurt someone. They're the ones paying up. Then there are the brokers. Those are the ones who are selling the drone insurance. The brokers sell the insurance that the underwriters write. And to be a broker, you have to have a license for each state that you're selling insurance in. Now let's talk about where do you actually go to get drone insurance? Well, currently there are 3 main players or platforms in this market that people get drone insurance at. That is Skywatch, Verifly, and droneinsurance.com, which is currently integrated in an app called AirMap, which a lot of you were probably familiar with. And they're working on getting their own app right now at the time of this video. First, let me tell you about Skywatch. The easiest place to go is probably skywatch.ai. They have an app. You can go on the map where you want to fly. You can draw around it and say, I want to fly in this area right here. It'll quote you at a price based on where you are. You can get coverage in any kind of hour increment you want. I think their options are 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, and 8 hours. Or you can choose to get coverage on a month-by-month basis with them. So you can say, I want coverage for only this month or only next month. And so that's a big advantage over some of these annual policies where you get to buy it for the whole year. Another cool thing about Skywatch is that they have flight logs of how you're doing when you're flying, and they score that to see how risky your flight was. And the less risky your flight is, the cheaper they will provide drone insurance to you. So it's almost like that safe driver discount that some car insurance companies give. I'm not going to go into all the deep dive details of Skywatch on this video. We'll have another video linked in the description where we'll thoroughly review that product if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Now, another similar company to Skywatch is Verifly. They've been around for a while in the on-demand drone insurance game. In fact, I think they were the first ones to come out with this concept. And they, much like Skywatch, will insure you for a certain area, although on Verifly, it's always a circle. You can't really draw the area that you want. So I believe it's about a 2-mile radius that you're insured. Now, the third player is droneinsurance.com, and they're currently integrated with some apps like AirMap. They're working on an integration with Drone Deploy, and they're going to be coming out in some other apps as well as of the time of this video. Now, with droneinsurance.com, they have a base coverage that starts at $7 a month, and you have to get that for an annual basis, so you pay $7 a month every month for a year, and then you can add on to that as you need. And that varies on how many drones you add to your policy, and they usually insure in day increments. So you can get insurance for 1 day, for 90 days, things like that. So your month to month and your day-to-day costs can change, but they have that base $7 a month that you'll always pay no matter what. So it's kind of like the on-demand drone insurance with a little twist. Now, all 3 of those players, Skywatch, Verifly, droneinsurance.com, they're all working with a broker. So they'll work with companies like Global Aerospace, Liberty Mutual, State Farm, things like that. Those are the people who are actually selling the policies. These other platforms are just the technology behind how to get the customer to the policy. So now that you know where to go to get insurance, how do you actually get the insurance on these platforms? Well, typically when you sign up, they're going to ask you a series of questions like what kind of coverage you need, the value of what's being insured, how many flight hours you have, your training, your accident history, the list goes on. They want to know all this stuff so they can make sure that you are insurable. Now, generally, all these detailed questions are for the annual policies. The apps tend to ask much fewer questions since they're just insuring you for a day or for a couple hours. Overall, we found it to be a pretty painless process to get insurance. You can get there and get going and be insured really quickly. All right, so you know the different kinds of insurance, you know where to go, you know how to get it. Now let's fast forward. What do you do if you crash your drone? Let's say you're flying, you're filming for something, and then you hit somebody's dog, then you accidentally go hit their house, and then you crash into the street and the Lamborghini swerves and goes through a fire hydrant and hits another house. All your fault. what do you do? Well, first thing you need to determine is, should I file a claim? Basically, should I alert my insurance company that I need them to probably pay out some money? Well, if it's just cosmetic damage to the drone, like you got some scratches on it or something minor, probably not worth filing a claim. But if you have something like the example I just described, or you have actual real property damage, something like that, or your drone is now inoperable, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and file a claim. Well, now you're wondering, well, how do I file a claim? Most of these websites, apps, insurance companies, they have an email address where you send all the information to. So it's usually claims@Skywatch, Verify, whatever it is. You email them all this information about what happened. Basically just describe the event to them. Hey, I was flying my drone, I crashed into a dog, then crashed into a house, and a Lamborghini crashed into a fire hydrant, all because of me. Here was the drone I was using, here are the people involved, here's everything that happened. They're just gonna wanna know all this information so they can get an idea of what the situation is. If you look at the details of your policy, it's gonna say to notify the policy issuing office, but generally if you're going through an insurance company or one of these apps, you can usually go on their website or their app and they'll have some contact information for actually filing a claim. But like we said before, it's typically claims at whatever the ending is for that insurance company. Verify, Skywatch. All right, now that we've walked you through start to finish on what kinds of drone insurance, how to get it, what to do if your drone crashes, let's dive into some questions that we frequently get from our students at Drone Launch Academy. One of the first ones is my drone covered in my homeowner's insurance policy? Well, this answer kind of sucks, but it depends. It's likely that if the drone is just used for fun or for hobby, there's a chance that it could be covered. But sometimes these policies have exclusions for aircraft. So depending on how your insurance company looks at the drone, it may or may not be covered. So sorry, not a great answer here, but you're just gonna have to look, call your insurance company. I know that's a lame answer. Sorry. The next question, are drones normally covered under my business's general liability insurance policy? And again, the answer is, it depends, but probably not. Normally drones are not covered under your business's policy if it's just a general liability policy. There's typically exclusions in there about aircraft, and maybe sometimes it will say specifically drones. So typically not covered, but again, check with your insurance company, call the person who sold you the insurance, and you can ask them. They'll be able to tell you whether or not it is covered or is not covered if something happens with your drone. This is a big one. Is insurance legally required? The answer is no. And I don't know why it's not. Probably would be a good idea to require some type of liability coverage if you're doing commercial operations. Maybe it will be in the future, but for now, not required. We would say it's probably smart to have it, but not legally required. Now, with that said, if you're working for a client, they're probably gonna wanna see some type of proof of insurance, and it's just gonna make you look like more of a professional if you have your licensed and insured, rather than just going out being uninsured flying around. Another popular one, do I have to have my remote pilot certificate or my Part 107 license, as some people call it? The answer is sometimes. A lot of times for the annual policies, they do require that you have that commercial license. For the on-demand apps, a lot of times they'll have an option for commercial or recreational, so you don't have to have it if you're flying for recreational use, but obviously if you're flying for commercial, you would have to have that. Another question, is my drone insurance valid if I'm traveling to another country? The answer here, usually not. Most of the policies that are originated in the United States are only good for your drone flying within the United States. So if you buy drone insurance, you take it to another country, you crash it, probably out of luck there. So maybe look into getting additional coverage if you're going to another country and you want to be insured there. Again, talk to your insurance company. This might be something where you're gonna have to go outside of these apps and go talk to an aviation insurance broker to see what kind of options they have for you. All right, so that's all we got for drone insurance in 2018. If you have a question, please leave it below in the comments. Also, if you like this video, we ask that you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time.